From Lori dying in a prison cell with no doctor in sight, to Glenn getting cornered in a dumpster because one man panicked, these are the deaths the show never let anyone walk away from clean, and somehow it only gets harder to forgive from here. 10. T-Dog. T-Dog never gets the spotlight. He's the guy who shows up, does the work, and never asks for credit, which makes it so much worse that his death barely gets a reaction in the moment. The prison fence buckles. Walkers flood the yard.
That way. Walkers might cut me up.
Make the trade, please.
Thought you were being eaten by dogs.
T-Dog grabs Carol, shoves her into a cell, and turns to face what's coming alone because there's no time for both of them to make it. T-Dog doesn't hesitate. He plants himself between Carol and the Horde because that's just who he is. The group, scattered and overwhelmed, doesn't even register he's gone until much later, and that delay says everything about how thin this group's coordination really is. For the show, it's an early lesson that this world doesn't reward decency, it just absorbs it. What makes this hit isn't the death itself, it's how quietly the group moves on. Nobody organizes to help him. Nobody notices in time. The prison was supposed to be safe, and the breach that kills him happens because the group got comfortable. The fault here isn't one villain, it's complacency. Rick's people had stopped treating every single day like a threat, and T-Dog pays the price for that false sense of security. This ranks at number 10 because the fault is collective and unintentional. The deaths above this one get a lot more personal and a lot harder to explain away. But while T-Dog's death came from the group's complacency, the next one comes from a decision two people made in the middle of an argument, and that's a different kind of guilt entirely. 9. Denise. Denise finally finds her voice. After seasons of being the doctor who doubts herself, she's mid-speech, finally confident, finally believing she belongs here. She's talking.
Gone with Tara. I could have told her I loved her, but I didn't. Because I was afraid.
Daryl and Rosita are arguing 2 feet away, distracted, careless with the moment. A crossbow bolt meant for a walker flies wide and takes her in the eye before she even finishes her sentence. Daryl freezes completely. He doesn't speak, doesn't move, just stares at what just happened because there's no version of this he can undo.
You guys aren't even trying because you're strong and you're smart and you're both really good people, and if you don't wake up and face your...
Rosita's face says she already knows this is on both of them, not just him. And then Negan says the line that turns their grief into something even worse. You can't get a do-over. For the show, it's proof that growth means nothing if the world doesn't care that you've grown. Denise spent years becoming someone steady, and the world kills her the moment she finally believes it. What makes this hit is the timing. Not a villain, not a planned attack, just 2 people who weren't paying attention at the exact wrong second. The fault belongs to Daryl and Rosita, and the show never lets them off the hook for it. Their carelessness gets dressed up as romantic tension, and Denise is the one who pays for it. This ranks above T-Dog because there are actual names attached to the blame here. Nobody can say this one was just bad luck, which raises the question every fan asked after this aired: how do you forgive an accident that's easy to prevent? The next entry doesn't even pretend it was an accident. 8. Sasha. Sasha has nothing left. Abraham is gone. Maggie barely speaks to her, and the war with Negan has taken every piece of hope she walked into this fight with.
Not better. Could be 30 years for us here. That's still too short.
Don't go.
She sits in the dark with a pill bottle and a walker locked in a coffin beside her. She doesn't take the pills. She lets the walker bite her instead, and waits. Sasha makes peace with this alone, in silence, because she's already decided no one gets to talk her out of it.
Damn, you are something else.
Maggie and the others have no idea what she's planning until the coffin opens at the worst possible moment for Negan. For the show, it's the first time a death isn't a tragedy that happens to someone. It's a weapon someone builds out of their own ending. What makes this hit is that it's the only entry on this list where the person responsible is the victim herself, and she chooses it with total clarity.
Sash, you're not gonna believe this crap. Holy doctor!
Was this fair? The show doesn't really let you decide. Sasha turns her own death into the only victory she has left, and that's either heroic or it's the war finally taking the last thing she had to give. This ranks above Denise because there's no accident here, no carelessness, just a choice made with full awareness of what it would cost. But if Sasha's death is the war asking everything of someone willing to give it, the next death is the war punishing someone for trying to manipulate his way out of paying anything at all. 7. Spencer Monroe. Spencer has spent this entire war hiding, calculating, and waiting for someone else to take the risk so he doesn't have to. He walks up to Negan and pitches him on killing Rick, smiling the whole time like this is a business deal and not a betrayal. Negan listens, tilts his head, and then drives a knife straight into Spencer's stomach. Negan doesn't even raise his voice. He pulls the knife out almost casually, watches Spencer realize what just happened, and delivers the line that defines the entire encounter. "You didn't have the stones, and now you never will." Rosita is the only one who reacts, lunging for Negan in fury, but it changes nothing because Spencer is already gone. For the show, it's a brutal reminder that this world doesn't punish weakness. It punishes cowardice dressed up as cleverness. What makes this hit is that nobody forced Spencer into this. He chose betrayal as a strategy and got read instantly by someone worse than him. This is the rare death where the answer to, "Was it fair?" is an easy yes. Spencer built the trap. He just didn't expect to be the one who fell into it. This ranks above Sasha because Sasha's death cost her something. Spencer's death cost him nothing. He hadn't already given up the moment he decided loyalty was negotiable. This is where the show stops pretending that surviving means something and starts asking whether it ever did, because the next death isn't about a bad decision in the moment. It's about a standoff that never should have escalated in the first place. 6. Beth Green. Beth has survived Terminus, survived losing her father, survived more than almost anyone left standing. She finally has a way out of Grady Memorial, finally has people coming for her. The exchange goes wrong in seconds. Dawn raises her gun out of pure panic at losing control of the room, and Beth, finally pushed past her limit, lunges at her with a pair of scissors. Dawn fires before she even seems to register pulling the trigger. Daryl doesn't process it as grief first. He processes it as rage, raising his gun on Dawn before anyone can stop him. The group around them goes completely silent because nobody saw this ending here. Not after everything Beth survived to get this far. For the show, it's the moment cruelty stops feeling like a strategy from villains and starts feeling like an accident nobody can take back. What makes this hit is that Beth dies the moment she finally stands up for herself, after seasons of being underestimated and overlooked. Dawn pulls the trigger, but the system she built at Grady, the hostages, the control, the desperation, is what put a gun in her hand in a room with someone who'd finally had enough. This ranks above Spencer because Beth didn't choose this fight. She was cornered into it by someone else's broken system, and that makes the blame heavier, not lighter. If you're a Walking Dead fan who remembers where you were when these moments aired, make sure you're subscribed, because this is where the list stops being shocking and starts being permanent. The top entries on this list are the ones that changed everything. If one of the moments you were expecting hasn't shown up yet, don't worry, because this is where the list stops being shocking and starts being irreversible. And if you're a Walking Dead fan who remembers where you were when these moments aired, make sure you're subscribed, because the top entries on this list are the ones that changed everything. 5. Abraham and Glenn. Negan stands in front of the group with Lucille resting on his shoulder, and for the first time, the show makes it clear that nobody, not even the people we love most, is protected by plot armor anymore. He walks the line slowly, taunting, drawing it out, before settling on Abraham and ending him in seconds.
Okay, Dad. Taking it like a champ.
Then Daryl reacts. Negan changes his mind mid-sentence, and Glenn becomes the second name on a list that was never supposed to have two. Negan doesn't even flinch, delivering the line that turns the entire scene into a warning. 'Cause that's the rule. Get your stuff and find one bad mama jama of a barbecue grill. Rick's group stands frozen, forced to watch both deaths without being allowed to move because resistance means more deaths added to the list. For the show, this is the moment the war with Negan stops being a future threat and becomes the defining horror of the next 2 seasons. What makes this hit isn't just who dies, it's why. Abraham and Glenn don't die for a reason connected to who they are. They die because Rick's group escalated a war they weren't ready to finish. The fault sits squarely on Rick, on the decision to provoke an enemy this dangerous, without fully understanding what retaliation would look like. This ranks here because 2 names die for 1 mistake, and the entries above this one are about a single person's death, costing exactly as much as it should. And if that felt unfair, what comes next makes unfair look like a mercy. 4. Lori Grimes. Lori is pregnant, terrified, and trapped inside a prison that was supposed to be the safest place this group had found since the world ended. She goes into labor with no doctor, no working equipment, and a baby in breech position. Maggie has no choice but to perform a cesarean with a kitchen knife, while Lori bleeds out beneath her hands.
Go pull him out.
Lori knows what's happening before anyone says it out loud. She tells Maggie to do what needs to be done, then turns to Carl and says the words that decide everything that follows.
You have to take care of your sister now.
Carl can't process what he's being asked to do. He stands frozen for a moment that feels endless, and then ends his mother's life himself so she won't come back as something else. For the show, this is the moment childhood stops existing for Carl entirely, and the moment Rick begins the breakdown that defines his character for the rest of the season.
Oh, no.
What makes this hit isn't the death itself, it's how preventable it feels. This group had time to plan for this pregnancy, and didn't. No doctor was secured. No real preparation was made. The fault here isn't a villain's cruelty, it's the group's failure to treat survival as something that requires planning, not just luck. This ranks above the lineup because Lori's death isn't a war casualty. It's a failure of basic preparation, and that kind of avoidable tragedy hits differently than violence from an enemy. This changed everything for Rick. The show was never the same after this, because his identity as a father and a leader collapses the moment he's not there for it. 3. Andrea. Andrea has every reason to leave Woodbury. She's seen what the governor does behind closed doors, watched him lie to her face more than once, and still, she stays. She finally moves to escape, finally tries to act, but it's too late. Milton, dying and reanimating beside her, is the threat she didn't account for, and by the time she understands what's happening, the Walker bite has already become inevitable. Andrea sits with the gun in her hand for a long moment before deciding what kind of ending she wants. She doesn't run from it, doesn't pretend there's another option left, and that quiet acceptance is somehow more devastating than panic would have been. The group that finds her can only watch, because there was never going to be a version of this where they arrived in time. For the show, it's the final proof that trusting the wrong person for too long doesn't just cost time, it costs everything. What makes this hit is that Andrea wasn't naive in the way fans love to claim. She was smart, observant, and still got this completely wrong, which makes her death feel less like punishment and more like a warning about how convincing manipulation really can be. The fault is hers, and the show never pretends otherwise. She had the chances. She had the warnings. She stayed anyway. This is where the series crossed a line it couldn't come back from, because Andrea's death proves that intelligence alone was never going to be enough to survive this world. Fans never forgot this moment, because it ended the idea that good judgment was a kind of armor. This ranks above Laurie because Laurie's death came from a failure to prepare. Andrea's came from a failure to listen to herself. And that's a much harder kind of blame to forgive. But that death changed one character more than any other. And that character is who the next entry is really about. 2. Carl Grimes. Carl has spent his entire life in this world being told to be careful, to stay close, to never wander off alone, and for years, he mostly listens. He goes off on his own to help a stranger, gets cornered, and takes a bite to the side that he hides from everyone, including Rick, for as long as he possibly can. Carl doesn't tell his father until there's no version of this where hiding it any longer matters. He sits Rick down and says the words that end the conversation Rick never wanted to have. I got bit. It's not gonna be okay. I know that now. Rick refuses to accept it at first, searching for any answer that isn't the truth in front of him. Michonne and the rest of the group go quiet around them, because there's nothing left to negotiate with a bite this far gone. For the show, this is the moment Rick's entire purpose, protecting Carl above everything else, becomes something he was never going to be able to finish. What makes this hit is that Carl's death isn't punishment for who he is. It's the cost of finally becoming someone who acts on his own values instead of just surviving. The fault is complicated. Carl chose to help someone. Rick spent years building a world that taught Carl that kind of choice could still get you killed. This didn't just end a character, it ended what the show was trying to be, because Rick's entire arc had been building toward protecting Carl long enough to see him become an adult. The show was never the same after this, and fans never forgot watching Rick lose the one person his entire journey had been about. This ranks above Andrea, because Andrea's death closes a chapter. Carl's death closes the reason Rick was fighting at all, and the most disturbing part isn't even the moment itself. It's what it means for the one entry left, the death that doesn't just end a person, it ends an era. 1. Glenn Reitze. Glenn survives Atlanta, survives Woodbury, survives Terminus, and somehow becomes the one person fans believed the show would never actually take from them. Negan walks the line, taps Lucille against his palm, and stops directly in front of Glenn. There's no warning, no build-up beyond what's already happened to Abraham seconds earlier, just Negan swinging until there's nothing left to recognize. Glenn tries to speak. He looks for Maggie in the crowd, manages half a sentence before he physically can't form words anymore. And that single detail is the part fans still can't fully process years later. Rick's entire group stands paralyzed, forced to watch without moving, because any reaction means more names added to the list. For the show, This is the moment the series stops protecting its emotional anchor characters entirely and proves that surviving this long was never a guarantee of anything. What makes this hit isn't just the brutality, it's the unraveling that led here. Nicholas panicked months earlier and got Glenn cornered by walkers, planting a death fans thought already happened, only for the show to bring him back and take him for real here instead. The fault stacks twice. Nicholas's cowardice nearly killed Glenn once already, and Rick's decision to escalate this war with Negan finishes what Nicholas almost started. This is where the series crossed a line it couldn't come back from, and fans never forgot this moment, because it proved no death on this list, not even the one everyone assumed was safe, was ever actually off the table. This ranks at number 1 because every other entry on this list cost the group something. Glenn's death cost the show its sense of safety entirely, and that's a wound this series never fully recovered from. What Negan took from Glenn didn't just end a character, it ended the idea that this show would ever protect the people fans loved most. These were the deaths on The Walking Dead that someone could have prevented, and never did. Which one still doesn't feel real to you? Did we miss one? Drop it below, we might build the next video around it. Subscribe if you're not done processing what this show did to you. Click here to watch the craziest zombie mutations you forgot about in TWD. It hits just as hard.